A Hollywood legend faces off against the Chief Justice, unveiling a truth so explosive it could shatter the Supreme Court's sacred trust, igniting a battle that will redefine justice itself. The Supreme Court chamber was a cathedral of silence, its marble columns towering like sentinels over a scene charged with unbearable tension. Every eye was fixed on the podium, every breath held in anticipation of a moment that could alter the course of American justice. Chief Justice John Roberts, a man renowned for his steely composure, leaned into his microphone, his voice taut with frustration. "Mr. Washington," he declared, his words slicing through the stillness, "I am prepared to dismiss this case this instant unless you produce concrete evidence to back these grave accusations." The weight of his warning hung heavy, a gauntlet thrown down before the nation's highest court. Yet, standing calmly at the podium, unfazed by the Chief Justice's stern rebuke, was Denzel Washington, Hollywood icon, cultural titan, and now, improbably, a citizen challenging the very pillars of judicial power. Cameras captured the electric moment as Washington, with a steady hand, reached into his briefcase and drew forth a sealed manila envelope. "Your Honor," he said, his resonant voice cutting through the room like a blade, "I have exactly what you demand, and what I'm about to reveal will upend everything Americans believe about our judiciary." Robert's expression shifted from irritation to stunned disbelief as Washington handed the envelope to the court-martial. No one, not the justices, not the packed gallery of journalists and scholars, could have anticipated that this actor, known for commanding the silver screen, would arrive armed with evidence potent enough to rock the Supreme Court to its core. As Roberts opened the envelope, his face drained of color. The documents within were a ticking bomb, poised to send shockwaves through the halls of justice, exposing truths that would challenge the court's sanctity and ignite a firestorm of accountability. Before we plunge into this extraordinary clash between a Hollywood legend and the guardian of America's judiciary, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay locked into our coverage of where entertainment collides with the pinnacle of power. Now, let's unravel the electrifying saga of how this historic showdown came to be. A confrontation that would prove no institution, no matter how revered, is beyond the reach of truth. John Roberts, Chief Justice since 2005, was a figure of gravitas, appointed by President George W. Bush to steer the Supreme Court through turbulent times. At 70, with nearly 2 decades at the helm, Roberts had earned a reputation as a meticulous jurist, a guardian of the court's traditions and legitimacy. His tenure was defined by judicial restraint, a commitment to shielding the court from the political maelstroms that threatened its authority. "The court's power rests on public respect for our decisions," he once wrote, "a respect earned through judgments free from political taint." This creed guided him through controversies, often casting him as the swing vote in cases that divided the nation. Roberts was no mere judge. He was the steward of an institution, a man who saw himself as the last line of defense against forces that could erode the judiciary's sacred independence. Denzel Washington, meanwhile, had forged his legend in a different arena. At 69, the 2-time Academy Award winner was a colossus of cinema, revered not only for his unparalleled talent, but for his integrity and intellect. Unlike many in Hollywood who courted controversy with reckless rhetoric, Washington was deliberate, his public stances rooted in research and conviction. In recent years, his focus had shifted to judicial reform, sparked by his son's documentary exposing alleged corruption in federal courts. The film raised troubling questions about judicial appointments and conflicts of interest, stopping just short of implicating the Supreme Court. For Washington, it was a call to action, a spark that ignited a passion to ensure the judiciary lived up to its promise of impartiality. He was no longer just an actor. He was a citizen on a mission, driven by a belief that justice demanded transparency. The collision between these two titans began 6 months earlier, when Washington filed a daring petition with the Supreme Court. His challenge targeted an obscure federal law shielding judicial misconduct from public scrutiny, arguing it violated the First Amendment and stifled accountability. Legal scholars were floored when the court agreed to hear Washington v. Federal Judicial Conference, a decision signaling that at least 4 justices saw merit in his claim. Most petitions are dismissed outright. This one's acceptance was a thunderclap, a sign that Washington's allegations carried weight. As the hearing date loomed, whispers grew louder. Leaked reports suggested Washington possessed documents proving federal judges had accepted undisclosed payments from corporations with cases before them. More explosively, rumors swirled that his evidence might ensnare the Supreme Court itself. Chief Justice Roberts, ever the protector of the court's dignity, issued a rare public statement. "The judiciary's integrity demands facts, not speculation," he declared. "We will hear this case with open minds, but we will not abide baseless attacks." Behind closed doors, Roberts had been proactive, implementing stricter financial disclosures for judges and reviewing the court's recusal practices. Yet he remained adamant that the judiciary should self-regulate, free from external oversight that could compromise its independence. The stage was set for a historic confrontation between 2 men who, despite their disparate worlds, shared a deep reverence for American institutions. Washington sought transparency. Roberts sought to preserve the court's autonomy. Their clash would test the limits of both. The Supreme Court chamber was alive with an energy rarely felt within its hallowed walls. The gallery overflowed with journalists, legal minds, and even celebrities, all drawn to witness a spectacle unlike any in the court's history. Court officers enforced strict decorum, but the tension was a living thing, crackling in the air. As Chief Justice Roberts called the court to order, his voice echoed through the marble expanse. "We will hear argument today in Case 22, Series 631, Washington v. Federal Judicial Conference." He noted Washington's bold choice to represent himself, though counsel was present. "You may begin, Mr. Washington." Denzel Washington approached the podium with the same commanding presence that had captivated audiences for decades. In a tailored dark suit, he stood tall, his voice filling the chamber with a gravitas that silenced even the most skeptical. "Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the court," he began. "I stand here not as an actor, but as an American citizen, heartsick over the erosion of trust in our judiciary." With measured precision, he argued that laws shielding judicial misconduct violated constitutional transparency, citing historical precedents with a fluency that stunned observers. His preparation was impeccable, his passion palpable, a citizen wielding the Constitution as both shield and sword. Justice Elena Kagan leaned forward, her tone probing. "Mr. Washington, this court has long held that the judiciary's internal matters are beyond congressional oversight. What makes your case different?" Washington met her gaze, respectful but unyielding. "Justice Kagan, the difference is the public's right to know when those entrusted with our laws harbor conflicts that taint their impartiality. This isn't about controlling decisions. It's about ethical transparency, a standard every other branch must meet." His response was a masterstroke, framing his argument as a defense of public trust, not an attack on judicial power. Justice Samuel Alito, a staunch conservative, pressed further. "The separation of powers is sacred. Aren't you inviting interference with judicial independence?" Washington's reply was swift. "On the contrary, Justice Alito, independence is undermined when the public doubts the court's impartiality. True independence demands accountability." His words resonated, a clarion call that even skeptics couldn't dismiss. As he fielded questions, Washington's legal acumen shone, citing obscure precedents with the ease of a seasoned attorney. The gallery watched, awestruck as a Hollywood star held his own against the nation's sharpest legal minds. Then came the pivotal moment. Chief Justice Roberts, who had been silently taking notes, set down his pen and fixed Washington with a piercing stare. "Mr. Washington," he said, his voice edged with steel, "your petition levels serious accusations of undisclosed conflicts among federal judges, claims that could erode public faith in our courts. Yet your filings offer assertions, not evidence." The chamber grew deathly quiet, the weight of his words sinking in. "You've hinted at documentation in interviews, but it's absent from your submissions. I warn you now. I am prepared to dismiss this case unless you provide concrete proof. This court will not be a stage for unsubstantiated attacks." The silence was suffocating, a collective intake of breath as the gallery braced for Washington's response. Legal experts exchanged glances. This was unprecedented, a Chief Justice demanding evidence on the spot. Washington stood motionless, the moment's gravity etched on his face. Then, with deliberate calm, he reached into his briefcase. "Your Honor," he said, his voice steady as granite, "I have what you seek." He produced a sealed manila envelope, its presence a thunderbolt in the room. "I withheld these documents on counsel's advice due to security concerns, but I'm ready to submit them now." Robert's skepticism wavered as Washington handed the envelope to the marshal, who delivered it to the bench. The Chief Justice opened it, extracting several pages. As he read, his expression morphed from doubt to concern, his eyes flicking to Washington, then back to the documents. He passed them to Justice Clarence Thomas, whose eyebrows shot up in visible shock. The other justices leaned in, straining to see. Robert's voice, now unsteady, broke the silence. "The court will take a 15-minute recess. Counsel will remain." As the justices vanished behind the curtains, the gallery erupted in whispers, a frenzy of speculation. Something monumental had transpired, though its nature remained a mystery. When the court reconvened, the atmosphere was transformed. Robert's demeanor was grave as he addressed Washington. "Mr. Washington, these documents, if verified, raise serious concerns about practices within the federal judiciary, but we cannot accept them without authentication." Washington nodded, undaunted. "I understand, Your Honor. That's why I've included their chain of custody and expert verification." He produced additional materials, notarized statements, forensic analyses, each a brick in a fortress of evidence. These documents reveal undisclosed financial ties between 7 appellate judges and corporations with cases before them, he declared, his voice commanding the room. "Worse, they show a systematic effort to conceal these relationships, undermining public trust." The gallery murmured, silenced by Marshal Gail Curley's sharp call for order. Justice Sonia Sotomayor spoke, her tone urgent. "Mr. Washington, these are grave allegations. How did you obtain these documents?" Washington's response was unflinching. 3 whistleblowers from the U.S. Court's Administrative Office came forward after their internal complaints were buried. Their affidavits, included here, attest to the record's authenticity. For the next hour, Washington walked the court through the evidence, document by document, his command of judicial ethics and procedure astonishing. This was no celebrity stunt. This was a citizen presenting a meticulously crafted case, a beacon of civic duty. The justice's questions were relentless, testing his evidence's strength and his argument's logic. Washington stood firm, his responses precise, his respect unwavering. A shift occurred. Roberts, the most skeptical, began asking questions that betrayed a growing concern. "If authentic," he said, "these documents suggest a failure in our disclosure system. But what remedy do you seek? Surely not a new oversight regime imposed on the judiciary." Washington's reply was a masterclass in clarity. "Chief Justice, I'm not asking for a new regime. I'm asking you to strike down provisions that shield misconduct, violating the First Amendment. Congress can craft the remedy, but this court must first remove unconstitutional barriers to transparency." His words were a rallying cry, a call to uphold the Constitution's promise. As Washington concluded, the courtroom's mood had shifted from skepticism to respect. The turning point came when Roberts, after a hushed exchange with Justice Brett Kavanaugh, delivered a statement that stunned the chamber. "Mr. Washington," he said, his voice carrying a rare vulnerability, "when you filed this petition, I doubted whether an actor, however accomplished, should bring such a case before us. I feared this was celebrity activism, not constitutional concern." The gallery held its breath. Roberts' candor was unprecedented. "I was wrong," he continued, his words echoing like thunder. "You've presented your case with diligence, respect, and preparation that shames many attorneys who appear here. Your evidence raises concerns that demand our attention. Thank you for your courage." Gasps rippled through the gallery. For the Chief Justice to admit error was earth-shattering. Washington stood still, the moment's weight visible in his eyes. "Thank you, Chief Justice," he replied, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "My only aim is to strengthen an institution I revere." As he returned to his seat, the impact reverberated. Legal correspondents rushed to break the news. The Chief Justice had validated Denzel Washington's challenge to judicial ethics, a seismic shift in a case he'd nearly dismissed. Within minutes, the story exploded across networks and social media, hashtags like Washington v. Roberts trending worldwide. Outside, reporters mobbed the court steps, awaiting Washington's exit. When he emerged, his dignity was a beacon amid the chaos. "Today, I saw the system work," he told the press, his voice resolute. "The Supreme Court heard a citizen's concerns and gave them fair consideration. That's all we can ask." A reporter shouted, "Did Roberts admit you were right?" Washington shook his head. "No, I saw a jurist with the integrity to weigh evidence, no matter who brought it. That's why he's Chief Justice." His measured response elevated him further, a victor who refused to gloat, a patriot reinforcing respect for the court he challenged. Legal experts were floored. Harvard's Lawrence Tribe called it unprecedented, not just for Washington's brilliance, but for Roberts' humility in embracing criticism. Former Solicitor General Neil Katyal added, "Washington didn't just win, he reshaped how the court views accountability." Bipartisan legal groups endorsed transparency reforms, and public polls showed 87% of Americans supporting Washington's call for disclosure. The White House issued a cautious statement. "The president respects judicial independence and awaits the court's ruling." Congressional leaders, led by Senator Chuck Grassley, planned ethics hearings, citing Washington's evidence as a wake-up call. That evening, Washington's media appearances were a study in grace. "This isn't about me," he told CNN. "It's about ensuring our judiciary earns the people's trust. Without that, the rule of law falters." His words struck a chord, a reminder that one citizen could spark change. By nightfall, the nation was abuzz, commentators noting the irony. An actor had outshone many lawyers, commanding the Supreme Court's respect through preparation and principle. 3 weeks later, the court ruled 7-2 in Washington v. Federal Judicial Conference, striking down provisions shielding judicial misconduct as unconstitutional. Roberts' majority opinion balanced transparency with independence. The judiciary's freedom does not shield judges from ethical standards the public expects. The decision was a triumph, hailed for addressing a complex issue with nuance. The Judicial Conference swiftly announced new disclosure rules, requiring judges, including justices, to report potential conflicts publicly. For Washington, the victory was a beginning. He founded the Judicial Integrity Foundation, uniting legal minds to promote transparency. Even skeptical justices, like Clarence Thomas, privately praised his work. 6 months later, Washington's speech at the American Bar Association earned a standing ovation. "The law belongs to every citizen," he declared, "and we all have a duty to ensure it serves justice." Roberts, present, later shared a warm exchange with him, implementing further court reforms. The case's ripple effects were profound. Civic engagement surged, law school applications spiked, and media coverage of courts grew sharper. Public trust in the Supreme Court, long eroding, began to recover, bolstered by Washington's challenge and Roberts' openness. In a joint interview a year later, Roberts said, "Washington's respect for the court, even as he criticized it, made it stronger." Washington replied, "Roberts' willingness to listen showed why our system endures." Their dialogue became a model for democratic resilience. Years later, the reforms were so ingrained that their controversy was forgotten. Washington returned to acting, winning another Oscar, his acceptance speech simple. "Our greatest roles are as citizens." Roberts, in his memoir, devoted a chapter to the case, writing, "The court's strength is its ability to listen when citizens like Washington show us how to serve justice better." The Washington case became a legal landmark, a testament to accountability and respect coexisting, proving that one citizen could strengthen the Republic's highest institutions. If this saga of courage and principle moved you, like this video and subscribe for more stories of Americans reshaping our nation. Comment below, what was the most powerful moment in this clash between Denzel Washington and Chief Justice Roberts? Share other tales of civic heroism you want us to explore. Together, we can keep our democracy vibrant, transparent, and just.